Well, this year's Democratic primary will be long remembered, not just because of Mcgrath's win, but also for the different ways people cast their votes and how much it cost.
As LEX18's political reporter Carolina Buchek tells us, Secretary of State Mike Adams is already looking ahead to November, even as how that election will work is still unknown.
It took about a week to count all of the ballots, but the results are finally in. Now, of course, the U.S. Senate race for the Democrats, it attracted a lot of attention to Kentucky's primary, but also this election was done differently. So a lot of people were paying attention to see how all of these changes would work out. About 85% of voters cast an absentee ballot in this primary. Typically, only about 2% vote this way. So this was a big change for Kentucky. But one bonus of it is voter turnout. The Secretary of State says we haven't had this many people vote in a primary in a long time.
It's far beyond what we saw in 2018, 2016, 2014, 2012. You have to go back to about 2008, 2010 to find anything even comparable.
However, the Secretary of State says this election will turn out to be a pricey one. He says absentee voting is expensive when more than 870,000 people are using it. The state still hasn't gotten its invoice from the post office, but the Secretary of State thinks this primary will end up costing about $12 million or more. He says a traditional election is about $9 million. So there's a cost difference.
The mail-in option is very, very expensive. It's not just the man hours for the clerks and their teams, it's also the postage, it's also the printing, it's very expensive.
So what will happen in November? How will Kentucky vote? Well, the Secretary of State doesn't know yet. He says his powers only allow him to change things if there is an emergency, and he wants to figure out if that is the case for November.
People think that I've got a magic wand that I can wave and change the election rules. I don't. I've got emergency powers. It's much different. I'm not going to abuse my emergency powers by making a recommendation to the governor before I know what kind of situation we have in the fall. But I'm also not going to sit on my hands unnecessarily.
The Secretary of State hopes to have November's election figured out by Labor Day, but as of right now, there's still many questions surrounding it. As far as the primary goes, one thing is for certain, and those are the results. LEX18's Conroy Deluche picks up our team coverage.
Charles Booker was hoping for a wide margin of victory in his home county of Jefferson to carry him to the nomination. He did get a 36,000 vote victory, but that's not enough. Booker did win both of Kentucky's biggest counties, but in the end, it is Amy Mcgrath who earns the victory and the shot at longtime Senator Mitch McConnell. In her statement she released shortly after declaring victory, she thanked Mike Breuer and Booker and said that she will seek their input as the focus of her campaign turns solely to unseating the Republican majority leader. Quote, "But there can be no removal of Mitch McConnell without unity. We must unify our Democratic family to make that happen, including those who didn't vote for me in the primary, and I intend immediately to start the dialogue necessary to bring us all together in our common cause for the general election. There is far too much at stake. The differences that separate Democrats are nothing compared to the chasm that exists between us and the politics and actions of Mitch McConnell. He's destroyed our institutions for far too long." End quote. McConnell also welcomed Mcgrath into the race with a prepared statement, quote, "Extreme Amy Mcgrath is lucky to have gotten out of the primary with a victory, but her reputation sustained significant damage all across Kentucky. Mcgrath is just another tool of the Washington Democratic establishment who has no idea what matters most to Kentuckians. It's clear this self-proclaimed most liberal person in Kentucky who supports government-run health care and abortion even in the 9th month does not represent Kentucky values. Amy, it's great to have you." End quote. So Booker's surge for a victory comes just short. It will be Amy Mcgrath versus Senator Mitch McConnell this fall. Certainly a race to watch across the country. In Louisville, Conroy Deluche, LEX18 News.